Confirmation bias is shaping your decisions right now, not occasionally, every day, and you're not even aware of it. And the unsettling part is that the smarter you are, the harder it is to see it happening. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly what confirmation bias is, how to recognize it when it's taken over a room, and 3 specific practices that actually work. Not borrowed frameworks, but what 40 years of high-stake decisions have taught me. Let's get into it. Confirmation bias is your brain's tendency to seek out, favor, and remember information that confirms what you already believe, filtering out everything that contradicts it. Most people think that just means seeking out information that agrees with them. Well, that's part of it. But here's what makes it truly dangerous. Once you form a strong belief, 3 things happen automatically. One is an unequal evaluation. Picture 2 studies landing on your desk. One says your strategy is working. One says it isn't. You read the first one and you nod. You read the second and start looking for the flaw. Is the methodology wrong? Is the sample size too small? Who's funding this study? Second is having selective memory. Your brain doesn't store evidence equally. What supports your belief stays accessible. What contradicts it becomes harder to recall the longer you hold that belief. And the third, what I call the backfire effect. When someone directly challenges a belief you hold, your brain treats it as a threat. The response isn't reconsideration. It's going into defense mode. Now, studies show you actually leave that argument more convinced than when you entered it. Together, the longer you hold a belief and the more it matters to you, the harder it becomes to change, no matter how much evidence says you should. Now, confirmation bias has always been part of human thinking. What's changed is the environment around it. Algorithms feed you content that matches what you already believe. Social media shows you opinions from people who think just like you. Search engines rank results based on what you've clicked before. Every system you interact with daily is built to confirm your existing views. Not by accident, but because confirmation keeps you engaged. The results compounds. The more confirming information you consume, the stronger your existing beliefs become. The stronger your beliefs become, the more your brain filters out opposing information. The more that information gets filtered, the harder it becomes to update your thinking, even when updating it is exactly what the situation demands. This is mindjacking in action, the systematic replacement of your thinking by systems built to do it for you. And confirmation bias is one of its most powerful tools. It's visible everywhere, in public discourse where people can no longer agree on just the basic facts, in organizations that keep funding failing strategies long after the evidence says stop, in leaders who build teams designed to tell them what they want to hear. You might assume that the smarter, more experienced people are less susceptible to this. The research says otherwise. Now, we tend to think that if you're smart, you are going to get it right. But what I have found, the smartest person in the room gets it wrong. And here's why it surprises most people. Confirmation bias doesn't get weaker as you get smarter, it gets stronger. David Kahn at Yale ran a study. He gave people a math problem where the correct answer contradicted their political beliefs. The smarter the person, the more likely they would get the answer wrong, in the direction that protected their belief. More intelligence applied more effectively in service of the conclusion they'd already reached. They always wanted to confirm their opinion. A smart person who has formed a wrong belief is better at defending it. They find flaws in the opposing data faster. They construct more sophisticated arguments. They're more convincing to others and to themselves. I've watched this play out in board meetings. A CEO had championed a major strategy. 3 separate analyses came back contradicting it. Each time, he found a different flaw in the methodology. And by the end of the meeting, he'd convinced the room the data was unreliable, and the strategy continued. Now, the outcome was exactly what the data had predicted: failure. Now, he wasn't dishonest, he was skilled, his intelligence was working against him, and everyone in that room let it happen. If you're intelligent, experienced, and confident in your judgment, you are not immune to confirmation bias. In fact, you are more vulnerable to it. And if you know someone who's always that smartest person in the room, send them this episode. They need it more than most. So, how do you overcome confirmation bias? Well, knowing what confirmation bias doesn't stop it. I know this from experience, not from research. I've been in rooms where everyone understood exactly what was happening, and it happened anyway. What works is different from what you've probably been taught. Now, you need to catch it in yourself. First up is what I call the flip debate. The moment I've most reliably caught confirmation bias operating in myself hasn't come from a checklist or some framework. It comes from a specific kind of conversation. I keep a small group of trusted advisors, people I call my kitchen cabinet. Now, they aren't peers, they don't have the same level of jobs, they're not even in the same industry, and they're almost never inside the organization that I'm part of. They have no stake in the outcome and no incentive to tell me what I want to hear. When I'm about to make a significant decision and I feel the pull of certainty, I take it to one of them. The conversation has a very specific structure. I argue my position fully and genuinely, the strongest version I can make. Then I stop. Then I argue the opposite. Not a token acknowledgement of the other side, a real debate with myself. I take the side I'm most resistant and make the best case I can for it. What happens in that second argument is what confirmation bias shows up in the gaps, the assumptions I've been protecting, the evidence I'd felt the urge to dismiss. When you're forced to argue a case you do not believe, you find the things you don't want to see when you were arguing the one you do like, the opinion you do want to go with. An outside advisor is essential. Someone who'll push back, ask hard questions, and notice when the flip argument is being faked. You can't do this with someone who needs something from you. The absence of stakes is what makes the honesty possible. The other is catching it in the room. It's what I call the 2 signals to watch for. Now, I've learned to watch for these 2 signals. They tell me confirmation bias has taken over the room. Both are visible before the decision is made, and almost everybody misses them. The first signal is the willingness to debate the other side. When a room has fully decided before the discussion is officially over, nobody wants to argue the opposing position, not even hypothetically. Raise the other side and watch what happens. Eyes go flat. The conversation moves on. Someone changes the subject. If a room can't genuinely engage with the strongest case against the preferred direction, confirmation bias is driving. The second signal is circular justification. Listen for reasoning that keeps returning to its own starting point. The evidence for the decision is the decision itself. When you cannot find an external reason, just a restatement of the conclusion, confirmation bias is driving again. When I hear circular justification in a room, I stop the conversation, not to embarrass anybody, but to name what's happening. I'll specifically state, we're not evaluating anymore, we are confirming. Let's go back to the evidence. That single intervention has changed the outcome of more decisions than any framework I've ever been taught. So, you also need to change how you decide. Full options, real challenge. Here's the most consistent change I've made in my decision making over the years, and it comes directly from watching what confirmation bias costs people. I force a full pros and cons analysis on every serious option, not just the one I'm leaning towards. That sounds obvious, but almost nobody does it. The natural pull is to build the case for the option that already feels right and compare it against the weakness of the alternatives. That's confirmation bias disguised as analysis. What I do instead is give every option on the table the same treatment. The best case for it, the best case against it, without knowing in advance which one I'm going to choose. For decisions that carry real weight, I'll even take that further. I'll bring in my brain trust, direct reports who will tell me what I don't want to hear. Kitchen cabinet advisors, which I talked about before, trusted board members. I ask specifically for the challenges, not validation, not enthusiasm. The place where the thinking is weak, the assumptions that might not hold, the evidence I might have filtered out. One question has changed how I approach every major decision. What is it I am not seeing? The answers from people who have no incentive to protect my view are exactly where the confirmation bias lives. Now, here's some exercises that you can try today. Now, this week, before you finalize any decision you've already started leaning towards, just do one thing. Find one person outside your organization, someone with no stake in the outcome, and run the flip debate. Argue your position fully, then stop, then argue the opposite with the same effort and commitment to arguing the opposite position. Don't just summarize the other side, truly argue it. Make the best case you can for the views you're most resistant to. Notice what comes up in that second argument. It's the gaps, it's the assumptions, the evidence you've been setting aside. That's where your confirmation bias is sitting. Run that exercise this week, not once, but every time you feel the pull of certainty on a decision that matters. So, what are the benefits of overcoming this confirmation bias? Now, the payoff for these practices compounds over time. Examined beliefs are more reliable than accumulated ones. Decisions that accounted for opposing evidence hold up better than decisions that filtered it out. Judgment that evaluates rather than confirms earns a different kind of trust from the people around you. Beyond your own decisions, catching confirmation bias makes you harder to capture, harder to mislead, harder to mindjack. Every algorithm, every platform, every persuader around you is built to exploit it. Seeing it operate in yourself reduces their leverage over your thinking. That's what these practices build. Not certainty, but something better. Examined confidence. Now, thank you for investing the time in one of the most important thinking skills that you can develop. If this episode was useful, share it with someone you know who's making important decisions, who needs to become aware of their own confirmation bias. The people around you benefit when you think more clearly. And so do you. Subscribe and hit that like button so you don't miss what's coming next. And it helps with the algorithm so more people would see this episode. Remember, ideas are not the hard part. Making the call is. You've got the ideas, so stop putting it off and make the call. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.